right? Tell us about that piece, because that's a lot more ambitious.
Yeah, it's a cool project.
Yeah.
It's, this is one, there's a sister screen set to this that will be installed in the lobby of a building called One Arts Plaza in Dallas, Texas, and that's going to happen in mid-March 2007.
Right.
And when you walk in the building, there'll be 2 sets of these screens, each with camera and computer, looking at the entrance. As you walk in, you'll see yourself on both screens. Functionally, it will look like 2 people looking at the same thing over an extended period of time. Each will retain a completely separate memory of what's taken place there. So hopefully this will reinforce this idea of reality as perception.
Sure.
And I think it's going to be a really, really rich piece. And it's been they've been great to work with. The developers, also collector, and she's very adventurous, and she's certainly taking a chance by breaking off from the pack and not putting something more traditional in a building like this.
And I think it's important, as we've embraced this world anyway, the whole collision, convergence of digital with computer with high-tech lifestyle.
Right.
So it makes sense. Now, we spoke earlier about the pioneers in video art,
right.
video sculpture, Namju Paik.
Yeah.
What, those barriers of entrance.
It's incredible.
Incredible. I mean, unless you really went to fine galleries or the compelling cutting-edge art gallery museums in New York and Paris and London, you wouldn't see this work.
Right.
Explain why we've been able to maybe allow artists like yourself to move beyond that barrier of entrance. What do you think was the big turning point, I guess?
Probably television and the personal computer.
Yeah.
And as we become a more media is part of our everyday life, and kids' life now, and everything's media through this portal right now. That's where information comes through. So I think that the idea of it being an art material, I mean, I think back, okay, we'll look at, say, David Smith making early welded works. I mean,
right.
And I remember an early quote, him taking to a gallery early on in his career with a welded piece, and the dealer saying, it looks like bits of bubble gum stuck together. And it's kind of like, which was probably high tech at the time, right?
Sure.
Electric welding.
Right.
And I think that, there's obviously a long history of artists using new technologies to make work. But I can't imagine for Namju Paik what it would have been like to try and get this work out there. It must have been a huge barrier to entrance. It's interesting now, it's changed quite a bit. But that said, I believe last year at Christie's was the first time that video work was ever auctioned.
Really?
I think it was 2 Bill Viola works. So 30 years out, it's kind of hitting the auction house. So it's this very, very long kind of digestive process.
And that's a random process.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You talk about art, artists who are creating work who may never see the success of their work in their lifetime.
Exactly.
Which is unfortunate. Do you ever feel compelled to go back into traditional sculpture?
No, I don't at all, actually. It's an interesting question. I get asked that question quite a bit because I did it for 15 years. I don't. One of the things I really love about what I'm doing right now is the generative evolving. It's not, I look back at the old work and there's a didactic quality to
right.
it. It's like monument, it's immutable, it's impermeable, it's just, and life isn't that way.
Right.
So why should art be that way, right?
Well, how about the convergence of that form with this form, integrating them?
I tried that, and I probably haven't fully explored it, but I did it for a while. It was kind of funny. It wound up a couple years ago. I did a piece called Interview, which is these huge plexiglass panels that were milled out spaces for screens to go in there, and it looked like one of the things it was neither nor. It kind of hadn't quite figured out which way to go,
right?
And you got to kind of like make that move.
Well, maybe as 3D rendering becomes, I keep thinking forward, and the 3-dimensional sculptures and the projection of 3 dimensions, maybe that'll afford you yet another breakthrough. I
think so. At the same time, the scale of these pieces, part of the conversation is sculptural, right? Because you're mediating your physical distance from the screen, and so it starts to have a lot of that formal language that attends to sculpture. I think a lot of time attends to the experience with these pieces.
And as the screens get bigger, and the way you can layer screens now and stack screens, I mean,
there's so much that can be done.
So much can be done.
Yeah. So there are a lot of projects on
the projectors today. Even the small, cheap projectors are incredible in their
fantastic
resolution and everything.
Yeah. So the barrier to entry obviously is dropping on all sides.
Right.
of the digital world right now, which is incredible. And the gallery were at Arco this past week in Madrid, Art Fair, and for 3 years of going there in the past, Bitforms is the only gallery showing new media,
Really?
more or less. There's a little bit of like
Interesting.
Julian Opie, there was a little bit of like Charles Sanderson kind of artist, and this year there's 5 other galleries showing it, and
Sure.
robotics and fully immersive
Right.
virtual environments, and
Right.
it's just like, it's a spark, and you start to see a catch, and it's beautiful to have that vantage point to watch it happen.
Well, Amsterdam has the RoboDoc Fest every year, which is a more robust robotic aspect of sculpture. Have you shown there? Have you done any installations there?
I haven't done, there's kind of like there's like the Z-Cam in Karlsruhe
Right.
and Ars Electronica, and I know a lot of those people, and I've gone to those festivals, but I just haven't,
Right.
it hasn't presented an opportunity.
Now you had a great collision of art with film at Sundance this year. Tell me about the experience at New Frontier, because I thought that was very well executed within that community.
Yeah, it was a really interesting process and project. I think this is the second year of New Frontiers, which is a program at Sundance to showcase new media and filmmaking. And I had never really thought of myself as a filmmaker, I was just
Right.
an artist doing my thing.
Right.
And I was invited, and the first kind of introduction to being a filmmaker was filling out the online form to register, and it's a name of director. And so I called, like, well, whose name should I put down? Like, it's, your name,
Yeah.
original title, subtitle, anyways.
Right.
So going out there, the audience obviously is a film audience, and immediately the work was seen in a completely different way. It was seen as nonlinear narrative filmmaking.
Interesting.
And I had never, I guess it's one of those things where you're aware of this, but you didn't put it into language that way or conceptually that way.
Right.
And something's presented to you, and then all of a sudden there's this history of that attempt, or practice rather, in filmmaking. And you're in a whole different world, and all of a sudden you're like jogging next to a whole bunch of other people who are near you, and it's fantastic. So the feedback I got from there was incredible, and from the directors who were there, people in the film world, and from the institute itself. So hopefully I'll be invited back again to do some other projects with them.
That's great. And as well, film has always had the rogue director who've experimented with the nonlinear vantage.
Right.
Lynch is one who comes to mind, David Lynch. I'm certain, I've got to think that when directors see work like yours and work by Luc Dubois and the other artists, that inspires them. It inspires a confidence, I guess, that they can bring this work out and maybe collaborate.
Right, yeah, and there were a number of conversations just along those lines, which are still trickling through the email and phone calls right now.
It's always just finding the time, isn't it? You reach a point where you become so busy, and then being able to absorb everything and then try a new project.
Yeah, but it's yielded great things and really great relationships. I'm so indebted to them for having me out there.
Right. You did something with MTV.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
And when I look at your work, I never thought that, but I guess early on, when you were experimenting with this video.
Yeah, it was just a straight animation loop of like sculpture.
Right.
And that was in the real world. That was very funny. It was, but to a certain extent, as we're talking about the, how, let's say, new media is trickled into culture. I mean, again, they got this as kind of as content.
Right.
You know what I mean? So in the real world house, there was a dedicated plasma screen that ran my looping animations on them, these like sculptural investigations.
Right.
Yeah, and I'd kind of like dutifully kind of watch out there. Yeah.
Well, now here's an interesting, this opens up a whole area of discussion with pop culture and high art colliding.
Yeah.
Because never before have we seen this, where graphic artists now are considered fine artists.
Yeah.
And, magazines like Juxtaposed and programming, television programming and film, I think today, you can have a youngster who may not be schooled in fine art, but appreciate art on a different level.
Yeah.
I mean, those barriers, they're just coming down daily, I guess.
Oh yeah, and if you really want to see evidence of that, bring an audience in here, and you can get the age divide right away.
Right.
Yeah, and under pick a number somewhere in the 20s and down, it's just right away they get it, and kids are just. The interactive quality of it, they're going nuts.
Right.
It's really fascinating. Again, it's that diet of television, the diet of computer,
Right.
the presumption that something will be interactive and entertaining on a certain level.